Why choose somatic therapy? You've done talk therapy, you've done the mindset work, you've read all the books, you've done coaching, and you can explain your emotional patterns, your family system, and childhood trauma in perfect detail. But yet, you're still stuck in the same patterns. You know you need to rest more throughout the day and take breaks at work, but you can't seem to be able to do that. You're stuck in the same bad work situations, even though you're changing jobs and companies. You repeat the same relationship patterns, even though you know you need to set boundaries. I'm Naomi Galinsky. I'm a somatic trauma therapist and nervous system educator. I help high-functioning, emotionally intelligent women who are stuck in burnout, stress, and overwhelm, and who might even be struggling with chronic health symptoms, regulate their nervous systems so that they can reclaim their lives. Today, I want to explain why somatic therapy might be different to anything else you've tried. And it might be the missing piece to getting behind why you're stuck in your emotional and behavioral patterns. It was certainly the missing piece for me to start coming out of chronic fatigue when I had that in my 30s. Somatic therapy is body-based, trauma-informed, and rests on the foundation of nervous system science. In a somatic therapy session, we start connecting to how the nervous system is talking to us through the language of sensation. Oftentimes, our mind tells a story, but our body holds a different story. And so I'm interested in a somatic session, how the body is responding to the story, the spoken story you're saying, and what story from the past it still might be holding on to. And that's done by slowing down and getting really curious about sensation. Like if you are stressed and anxious and burnt out, what does that feel like in the body? How does the body communicate to you that that is what's going on? Is there shallow breathing, tightness in the shoulders? Is your jaw clenched? Is your belly, is your gut clenched? And the reason why we want to work at that sensation level, at the body-based level, beyond talk therapy, is because that part of our brain that processes language is part of the neocortex, which is more evolved, whereas the nervous system is a more primitive mammalian and reptilian system. And that part of our brain that speaks, story tells, doesn't have access to what's being stored and held in the nervous system. Talking doesn't access or help process the parts in our nervous system that are still stuck in fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why talk therapy has an upper limit of how well it functions. Not that it's bad, but oftentimes somatic therapy is the missing piece that gets you through the next part of that healing layer. Let's use the example of pushing through the day, pushing through meetings, presentations, deadlines, parenting, working out, and at the day you're exhausted. And every day you feel a little bit more exhausted because the evening rest and the sleep is not enough to recover from pushing through the day. And over time, you're feeling more stressed and anxious and burnt out. And you know that something needs to change, but all the mindset work you're doing is not helping. And that may be because that pushing through, being productive, having have to do might be connected to survival of, if I don't, then I won't have the financial security to be safe in this world. Or if I don't push through, then I won't be valued. And if I'm not valued, then I'm not loved and seen. And that also triggers a survival threat in our system. And you might have, certainly that's for me, a lineage, an ancestry. You saw your parents and maybe your grandparents, and before that were really hardworking people, and they believed that that is the way of life. You have to work hard to be able to survive. I mean, that might come from war, from tough times that they had where that was necessary. And certainly society also tells us that message of we need to keep pushing and driving. And so if we don't connect to that primitive part of our body that's stuck in survival mode of, I need to do this, otherwise I will die or I'm not going to survive. And if we don't start releasing the survival energy that's trapped, then we unlikely have the capacity to change our patterns. We won't feel safe enough to change our patterns. So in a somatic therapy session, I would ask, what is your body telling you right now? And you start sensing all of the tension and the tightness. And then the question is, what does your body need for support? And that is different for each nervous system. It could mean rest, but maybe there is sympathetic activation, some charge that needs to leave your body before you can rest. And maybe that needs to move out. Maybe shaking is not the way I'm doing this, but there are many different ways to move charged emotions through the body. Maybe it's connecting to a trusted friend, or getting a hug, or taking a break where you just sit down and rest, or a nap, or a walk, and connecting with nature. In therapy, I would explore with you what works for your nervous system, and you're going to learn your body's signals and your language to connect to what does it need from moment to moment. And trust me, when you start feeling better and when you start connecting to how your body is setting boundaries of, this is too much, I need a break, it gets harder and harder to ignore the cues. And as the survival energy gets released and moves out, and there's more spaciousness in your body, and you start feeling what it feels like, it feels so good, what it feels like to have a more regulated nervous system, it will become easier to make healthy choices for you. And I've seen this over and over in clients, and that was certainly also for me the case. And the next part I want to talk about is the stages of somatic therapy. At the beginning, if you are emotionally overwhelmed or have this panic or fear, this big panic or fear, then the first part is just stabilizing your nervous system. When you're in this overwhelmed state, we can't do processing. That's overwhelming for the nervous system. So first, stabilize your nervous system to get to a place where you have enough energy and capacity to start processing the deeper layers of what might be happening. The second part is resourcing and building capacity to feel. Building capacity to feel sensations. Because when we've lived neck up in our heads, we're disconnected from our body. When we're constantly being productive in our intellectual space, problem solving, and doing our to-do list, and we're not connected to our body. And that means we're also not connected to sensations and how our nervous system is communicating to us. So the first part is learning to connect to sensations in our body. And the easiest way to do that is to start learning how to connect to pleasant sensations. And that's called resourcing, where we start connecting to things in life that help us feel pleasure and joy and ease. And then once we have enough capacity, can start feeling our body, then the next stage is starting to process or titrate trauma healing, titrate healing what's getting us stuck, what's keeping us stuck in stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and burnout. And in somatic experiencing, the modality that I'm currently doing and becoming a practitioner in, Peter Levine talks about titrating, which means that we go slowly into the discomfort, into the pain, the fear, basically the trauma, but we do it slowly, bit by bit. So we go in and then we resource and feel the expansiveness, the settling, the openness, or however our body expresses the expansion. And then we go back in and feel another layer. And we do that to prevent the overwhelm of our nervous system, to prevent destabilization and re-traumatization. Because if we go too deep, too soon, too fast, like some cathartic processes may, if you're not ready for it, or plant medicine ceremonies when you're not ready for it, then it's just too much fear to feel at once that you're not used to. And yes, once you have a lot more capacity and you're used to these kinds of processes, you can go deep. But you only do that if you're not scared of, if you don't have fear of the fear. So it's a process. You go slowly, you build the capacity, and you titrate the trauma healing. And then the last part is integration. So when you feel an activation of an emotion, of whatever belief or emotion got stuck in our childhood of we must be perfect, we must be productive, and that fear behind it of, oh my God, if I'm not perfect, if I'm not always productive, then I'm not good enough, everything will fall apart. That fear, we have to learn to feel it, and there will be a peak of that fear response. And then there's the deactivation, where that energy starts to move and leave the body. And it's important to stay with that process. And then the body starts to settle. Maybe there's a relaxation. Maybe there's a more sense of solidity in the body. Maybe there's an opening, a softening. Maybe there's a more grounded experience. Whatever it is that your nervous system communicates, now the process is over. It's important to stay with that process, because there we rewire the nervous system to be more in that open, expanded, grounded state, instead of living in this activated, stressed out state. And then there's the integration of how do you carry that into your life. And those patterns will keep showing up. But when we have more space, when we have started doing the trauma healing work, then we have the ability to step back, observe the pattern, and make new choices. And that needs to happen drop by drop until the new healthier pattern becomes the new habit. And that doesn't happen overnight, but that is the integration that needs to happen in your daily life from this new learning after a process. So how do you know that things are shifting? Maybe sleep gets better and you wake up a little bit more refreshed. And over time, instead of 4 cups of coffee, you only need 2, and then 1. Or you start realizing that working out every day might not give you the benefits that you're hoping because it's exhausting your body. And you start trusting that maybe working out every second day is enough. And you find that you're still strong and you have more energy and that it is enough. Or you start finding that when you're rushing in the morning, you rush out the door, you feel the tightness and the hurried energy in your body, and it doesn't feel so good anymore, because now you're connected to how your nervous system is responding to your lifestyle. And when you've done enough somatic sessions and you have this experience of what it feels like to have a regulated nervous system where you're more at ease and grounded and calm, and you're like, I like this state. And then you do these automated things that don't make you feel so well, it becomes so much more obvious and it becomes so much harder to ignore. And you start making healthier choices. You start shifting the patterns. And maybe you test going to bed a little bit earlier and you're like, oh, I feel so much better when I get longer sleep. And maybe you're able to take a longer lunch break and go for a walk. You have the ability to start being curious and try things out and see what works better for you in your life. If you're curious to experience any of this, if you're curious to try out somatic therapy and you resonate with me, then check out my offerings below. There are links to it. There is a groundwork series, which is 4 sessions, which is a great start to try out somatic therapy. And then there's a 6-month program if this really resonates with you and you're like, yes, I want to change my life. I'm tired of being stuck. Then check out my offering there. And I would love it if you could like this video or hit subscribe if this video resonated with you so that more people can find it. And do leave a comment if any of this resonates with you or you're just curious about more or want to share something about your story.